Dr. Ben Song risked everything when he used the Quantum Leap Accelerator to travel back in time. Now our team's working to find out why.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions, here with my co-host Stacie, here to talk about the second episode of the Quantum Leap revival titled Atlantis. The episode's description reads as follows. Ben finds himself headed into orbit aboard the Space Shuttle Alantis in 1999. Addison confides to Ian about a discovery and finds herself at odds with Magic and Jen. Okay, so last week when I was reading Internet Movie Database, it said that this leap was taking place in 1995.
Mm-hmm.
It was wrong, and it's still wrong. The episode actually takes place in 1998, according to the episode.
Yes, March 7th, 1998.
And the episode was directed by David McWhorter and written by Robert Hull. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. This is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you are listening to one of the podcast platforms that this is now listenable, please subscribe and follow. You can also head over to my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where this podcast can be watched, as well as additional content, both Quantum Leap related and otherwise. If you are already on my YouTube channel and like this podcast, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to my channel. I'd like to give a special birthday shout-out to friend of the channel, Ashley Wright, who turned 45 on Saturday.
Ooh, happy birthday.
This same Ashley Wright thinks that we have great chemistry.
I saw that, yes. I take that as a nice compliment.
So the reviews are in. The consensus is we have great chemistry.
Yay! Somebody's listening to us.
Granted, this is a consensus of one, but still, it's a consensus nonetheless. Nobody disagrees with this.
Let us know what else you guys think. Is this working? Do you like listening to us talk about this random stuff?
One more thing before getting into the actual episode. AlicePlace.com, which I regularly consulted. You reintroduced me to it. I was reading it quite a bit back in the day. When talking about the original series. They mentioned in last week's episode the alleyway that Ben ends up in after the robbery, after they successfully evade the police, is the same place that Doc and Marty landed when they got to the future in Back to the Future 2.
Yes. And with that would be the alley where they left Jennifer, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I wasn't even sure if you'd seen that movie.
Of course I have.
I mean, it's time travel related, so of course.
Right here somewhere.
Yep, it's on your shelf of a billion
There it
movies.
is.
There it is. Nice. So, Stacie, tell me, what were your thoughts overall of this episode?
I thought it was a pretty decent episode. I think the pacing went a little smoother than last week. We got a couple of amazing little Easter eggy things, which we'll get to, but that made my heart very happy. And I don't know, it was a little eccentric, I think. It was very, it was a bigger topic, right, than we usually saw in the original series. And I think that they're pushing things a little further, but overall, I think it was decent.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good episode. There are definitely some quibbles with it.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I thought it had the heart of the original series, which was a concern of mine, that they would just, be a straight-up action-adventure series. We saw a little bit of that in the pilot episode, but we definitely got it in spades here. There was definitely some goofiness towards the end with the climax of the episode, which is something that we are going to talk about. Yeah, I don't think it's totally realistic. It's definitely not prestige TV, but it's not trying to be. It's trying to be comfort TV.
Yes.
And that is very much in the spirit of the original series. But definitely better pacing than we had last week, for sure. So we open up this episode with Ben blasting off into space on Space Shuttle Alantis. Nothing new here. We saw that in the end of the episode last week. And Stacie, why don't you talk to us a little bit about the history that you discovered?
Okay, so obviously Space Shuttle Atlantis is a real shuttle for NASA. It had lots and lots of flights throughout the 90s and the 2000s. But I found that this particular date, March 7th, 1998, there was not a shuttle launch. So this flight is completely fictional. The last flight before that date was the 20th flight of Atlantis, which happened September 25th, 1997. And then it didn't have another flight until flight number 21, which was the 19th of May in the year 2000. So they were not active in the year 1998 at all.
So they're definitely playing fast and loose with history. They're not like the original series, which was closer to actual history.
Yeah, they're mentioning things that actually exist, but then they're fictionalizing the stories around them. I also didn't find any evidence that any of the characters on this episode are based on real-life astronauts. I did see that the Atlantis Space Shuttle did supply components to the International Space Station, which is what they said they were doing in this mission. But they did not launch that first piece, which is what they're claiming is happening. So, again, there's some reality to this, but it is totally fictionalized as far as the details go.
Now, when the space shuttle got into space, I thought that would be a natural point for the credits to roll.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't do that. They went on for another 10 minutes. It was very, very much like the show This Is Us that had super long cold opens.
Yes, I did notice that, and I thought about you and your cold open counts.
Because I frequently brought that up when I was doing my This Is Us videos. So we meet the pilot, Stratton, Samantha Stratton, which, according to AlicePlace.com and some other sources, and is supposed to be Samantha Stratton, the daughter of Tom Stratton from the original pilot episode Genesis of the original series.
And this was news to me. I hadn't caught on to that at all. So if that's something we're supposed to know, it's very well hidden. But I'm very excited that that connection was made, and I'm excited to discuss what that could mean for the future of the series.
And we were talking for quite some time trying to figure out if this was actually the case or people were just making this up. And after some investigation, we did discover that this was the truth.
Yes. Yeah, the baby was named Samantha Stratton, and that's the name of this character. And we can only assume that that is the same Samantha Stratton.
And she's played by Carly Pope, who is the exact same age that we were speculating that Samantha Stratton should actually be.
In 1998.
The other character here is the commander, Jim Reynolds, played by Jose Zaninga. He was actually on a House episode. You watched House, right?
I did.
Did you watch it the entire way?
I did, but I couldn't recall specifics like that.
Well, yeah, he shows up in a season 8 episode when House is trying to get Dominica, his wife, a green card, and he plays the guy who's investigating them. And spoiler alert, if you haven't watched the episode, doesn't go well. I was a little confused initially about the relationship between Jim and Samantha.
Yes, that confused me as well on the initial watch through. They seem to have a really tight relationship, and my question was, is this a father-daughter? Is this a romantic relationship? They were saying we finally got to go on a flight together. This was like their lifelong goal. Yeah, it seemed to be introduced kind of strangely.
And later on, Ben talks about how they love each other. This turns out to be nothing more than a mentor relationship.
Yes.
Because we do eventually hear references to Jim's wife.
Mm-hmm.
And that she promised to make sure that he made it home.
Right, which says that Samantha is close not only to Jim, but to his wife, and there's a very close relationship there. This is Jim's last flight with NASA, and this is Samantha's first flight.
So while they're talking, Ben is looking out into space and also admiring his view in the reflection, that of the person that he leaped into. He asks where the bathroom is. That would actually be my first question if I found myself on the space shuttle.
Wouldn't they have found it funny that he's asking that question?
I mean, I would think that they would think that he should know where it is. But maybe, I don't know, maybe he had some brain damage on the way up.
Maybe you get Swiss cheese from shuttle launches, too.
One issue that I noticed right away is that they're still not explaining the mechanics of how this whole leaping thing is working.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we see his mirror image as the guy that he leaped into, but we don't explain that. We didn't in the original pilot. And that's going to confuse the heck out of new viewers.
Right. If people haven't seen the original series, they're not following along about what exactly is going on.
And this is not a problem for me. I know the rules because I watched the original series, and I don't care if they explain it to me or not. I'm still going to watch the show regardless. But if the goal is to attract new viewers, they're not really succeeding this way.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so we're in the future. We are at Addison's apartment. She's ransacking her own place. Ian Wright knocks on the door, and after going through this for a little bit, Addison reveals that she discovered a flash drive. And we don't know the contents. It's encrypted.
Mm-hmm.
Ian suggests that Jen can break into it, not necessarily Ian. Though I'm a little confused by that. I would figure that Ian would have that ability.
So Ian basically said they do programming, but Jen would be a better hacker. And one thing I wanted to note about that scene is I really got the idea here that Addison and Ian are very close. Like, they seem to be besties. Ian brought Addison her coffee.
Which,
knew
by the way,
exactly how she takes her coffee, goes to her house to pick her up to go to work together, and was kind of hurt when Addison made a reference to "we're in this together," being her and Ben, and Ian thought that Addison meant Addison and Ian. So I think they're very close. Maybe even they were friends before the project started, I'm guessing.
It makes sense because I think last week Ian mentioned the fact that Ben and her were best friends. So that makes sense that they would also be close as well.
Yeah.
And by the way, Addison takes her coffee with oat milk and 3 sugars. This matters to me because I make coffee for a living. Okay, so we then go to the project where Magic and Jen reveal to Ian Wright and Addison Janice Calvici's role in things.
And, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Nope.
Addison knew right away the name Calvici. She said, "You mean as in Al Calvici?" So Addison's very familiar with Al and his role in the project.
Magic doesn't want Ben to remember things, so he wants to discourage that. Mainly because they think he is up to no good,
right?
Potentially.
They're questioning what were Ben's motives, what was his relationship to Janice in hijacking this project, and they thought it would be better if he doesn't remember. Because if, in fact, their goal is to, say, start the evil Leaper project and go cause havoc in history, it'd be a bad thing for him to know that that's what he's trying to do, right?
So for now, and absolutely, that's a good reason to not do that. For now, they're keeping things from Ben. Addison doesn't agree, but this is a legitimate reason why Addison does not tell Ben that they are, in fact, engaged. And that takes care of my issues last week.
Yep. So yeah, I made a note that this really seems to be nodding at that original rule of don't tell the Leaper things that they don't remember. It's for a totally different reason here, but it does seem to be like pointing that rule into effect where we're not going to disclose information.
And it makes sense the way as presented.
Yes.
So this is probably the reason, because Addison does not agree with Magic here, that she does not reveal the flash drive to Magic and Jen to ask for help.
Right. She doesn't trust what they might do with the information on it.
And this sets up a dynamic for the episode of Jen and Magic versus Ian and Addison, which kind of plays into the themes of trust that are present throughout this episode.
Right. In the same way that I got the indication that Addison and Ian are very close, I also got the indication that Magic and Jen are very close. They seem to have a close relationship. We learned that last week, how he took a chance on hiring her. So there is some division there. And we also learned that Ben was the one who kind of kept everybody together, right? He was the glue of the project. That's
also kind of a theme that kind of plays throughout the episode. I mean, like towards at this point and then at the end.
Yes.
After this episode, I am skeptical that Ian is involved in whatever's going on with Ben. And
I don't think that Ian knows all the things, right? Because Ian does seem to be surprised by things that they're learning. But I'm still questioning if Ian knows more than they're saying. Whether they're directly involved or not, I don't know. But I'm still suspicious of both Ian and Jen knowing something that they're not telling us. And what side of that they're on, I couldn't speculate. But I feel like there's going to be a twist where we find out one or both of them know something, and possibly even they're on opposite sides of the agenda.
So they finally locate Ben, and he's in a space bathroom. Well, I'm glad he managed to find that.
Yeah, it's in the lower deck or
something like that. Addison appears, and Ben marvels that he's in space. And that's pretty cool. We never actually saw Sam Beckett leap into space.
No, we never saw him leave the Earth's atmosphere.
Or even, for that matter, he didn't even leave the United States that much.
Not that much, no.
He did a couple occasions.
I think the closest he got to space, though, is when he was breaking that Mach 3 record.
Oh, that's right, in the original pilot.
He was still in our atmosphere, though.
So he's leaped into David Tamara, a completely made-up astronaut. There's no evidence that this person exists, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't. It is somebody that Ben admired.
Mm-hmm. And it prompted memories for Ben.
Yes. Tamara immigrated from Japan and became an astronaut. And we learned that Ben immigrated from Korea and also wanted to be an astronaut, but instead became a quantum theorist.
Yeah,
Go
so
figure.
he's kind of an astronaut. He's just going through time instead of space.
Absolutely. And now he gets to go into space. AlexPlace.com says that Tamara is the name of an aviation museum in Australia. It is also the name of a town in New South Wales, Australia. You think this is just a coincidence, but...
I mean, I don't know much about surnames in Korea. I don't know if Tamara's a common name or whatnot, but...
Now, you mentioned the fact that he starts remembering things.
Mm-hmm.
Magic and Jen want to put a stop to this, but Addison encourages it.
Addison encourages it and says, what else do you remember? Because, you know, she does have a different stake in this. She's his fiance. She wants him to remember his life. She wants him to tell her what the heck is going on.
It's definitely an interesting dynamic that they're introducing here.
Yes.
But I don't know that it's going to continue like that necessarily, because after we do squash this conflict by the episode's end. Still, we're not going to tell Ben anything.
And Ben agrees with that, by the way.
Yes.
She told Ben, I'm not supposed to tell you. And he said, you know what? That's smart.
So, Addison starts to show him how to do his job. He's pushing buttons, and then alarms go off, which is exactly what would happen to me if I were on a space shuttle.
And he was like, what did I do? And it wasn't him. But you know what I noticed at that moment? Ziggy seems to be a lot more helpful right now than they ever were. Because, like, in the original Leaps, Sam and Al would be able to help Sam because Al had personal knowledge how this worked or that worked. And in this case, Addison is just touching the hand link and, oh, this is the knob you need to push. This is the thing you need to do. And I don't know. Ziggy seems a lot more helpful than it was in the past.
That's good. Maybe they gave Ziggy some upgrades. As it turns out, the payload doors are jamming, causing the shuttle to spin out of control. And now we have the credits. We have the little title card saying Quantum Leap, and then we come back and we start seeing the actual credits for the show. They get things under control, but the mission commander, Jim Reynolds, is knocked unconscious. We see little blood floating around the wound.
That was a cool special
That was
effect.
definitely a cool effect.
I like that.
That's in my notes. It's a cool effect. I didn't think this was a great looking episode, effects-wise, but that was really cool.
Yeah.
The doc, which is Max, his name is Max, attends to the commander, while Stratton reveals that she promised his wife that she would look after him. And we get some backstory. Basically, he personally recruited her and trained her for 10 years. And that's where we learn all that information about this being his last and her first mission.
Yes.
And as it turns out, they only have 6 hours of breathable air, which seems to be a problem.
Sounds like a problem. Yep. But the crew didn't seem too concerned about this.
I would certainly be concerned about that. But then again, I'm not an astronaut and probably never will be.
Yeah. And Stratton said, all we got to do is, talk to Houston. They'll tell us what to do.
Well, I'm glad that she remains cool under pressure. I definitely would not. Addison appears, and Ben wants to leap, but nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.
That's because David is still going to die.
Yes, and this is the first time we hear in this episode the line,
you don't control the leap.
You don't control the leap. And Addison tells Ben that a few times in this episode.
So it's kind of a running theme throughout. Ben wants to find out how David dies now. We cut to the present day. Magic goes to visit Beth, who's played by Susan Dial.
Yay!
Who was the original Beth in the original series.
I was so happy to see her. That was amazing.
We had quite a bit of a conversation about how old Beth is supposed to be here.
Yes.
The actual actress is about 60, which is what she looks to be in this episode. She looks like she's playing a 60-year-old. But Beth in the original series, when we first saw her, 1969, was definitely not 7 years old.
Yeah. So in 1969, Beth and Al had been married for 8 years. And so she had to be at least in her mid to late 20s.
So Beth realistically should be about 80.
Yeah.
And she doesn't look like she's 80.
She doesn't. Yeah, we were saying, they should have pulled a Rebecca Pearson and aged this actress up a little bit. And it seems like they didn't account for the fact that the first time we met her was supposed to be in the past. So she is an older woman.
All in all, I don't really care about this. I'm just happy to see her. But still, it's kind of an issue.
Yeah. But it is great that they did bring back one of those original characters that we were asking about. What happened to Beth? We know Beth is still there, and she is moving on with her life after Al's passing.
And also interesting to note that Magic and Beth do know each other.
Yes.
They do have a seemingly close relationship, which ties into something we were talking about last week about how close Magic was to Al. It seems like there was a connection there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which draws back to the whole idea of they didn't allow Janice to be part of the project because of her relationship to Al and Sam. This confirms that Magic does have a relationship to the family as well. Why was it okay for him to lead the project and not for Janice to be a part of it at all?
So we cut to Jen, who's back at the project, and Ian is looking suspicious, getting a visit from somebody who's in charge of encryption. She tries to get Ian to spill the beans, but he won't.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we know Ian is trying to hack into the thumb drive for Addison, and we know that Jen now knows about it, and Jen seemed to put together pretty quickly what's going on.
That Jen is definitely not a fool. In the past, Addison just straight up tells Ben that the project does not want Ben to remember anything in case he decides to enact whatever evil plan he's got going on. They don't know for sure that Ben is up to no good, but they're taking precautions in case
they think there's a chance. Because they never would have guessed he would have done this in the first place. So what other secrets could he be hiding?
So Ben realizes that Addison can't tell him anything about himself, so he starts to ask about her, specifically about the wedding ring.
The engagement ring on her finger.
Which, ironically, also is about him.
Yes.
And we learned that their wedding is supposed to take place in 6 months. I'm not sure. Did we know that last week?
I don't think that was ever said, no. They had their engagement party. Apparently, they do have a wedding date set. It's 6 months in the future. And I feel like we're going to see that. I feel like we're going to get to that date. And my personal guess is that that's when Addison's going to tell him, or he's going to find out that he is with her. Because I feel like she's going to be like really upset on that date, and he's going to get it out of her what's wrong, and she's going to say, it's my wedding date, and he's going to say, why the heck are you here? Where's your groom? And he's going to remember, or she's going to tell him at that point.
We're definitely
That's my guess.
We're definitely going to have this come out eventually. We don't have this sitting out there for it to never come into play, that's for sure. So the problem with the space shuttle requires that Ben go on a spacewalk, which is where he originally died from debris.
Yeah, they got the classified document from NASA that told them exactly how David Tamura died, and now Ben's facing that situation.
And the mission is to jettison the ISS module. Addison tells him that he has 90 minutes to get out there, complete his mission, and get back before getting hit by debris. And as a result, Ben says, you don't need to do those safety checks on me. We're good. And he manages to talk his way out of that to save some time. Stratton gives him a little speech that Jim Reynolds would give him.
It was a whole speech that comes back later in the episode, which was basically Reynolds' mantra is that you can know everything, but you're never going to know everything. And no matter what, the thing that you're facing, you're not going to be prepared for, and you have to just trust your gut and do what you think is right, basically.
We have a nice little scene where both Ben and Addison are marveling at being in space. We have Addison all comfy sitting on the space shuttle.
Mm-hmm. Which was a very Al type of moment, really.
Yeah, it was cute. And then Ben's like, can we focus here? We need to get to work. We're on a time schedule.
And he does it. He gets the piece out there where it belongs.
Yep. He completes his mission. Oh no, the debris is coming early. Ben manages to dive out of the way.
Right, because he knows the debris is coming.
But this creates further problems. in that it damaged the heat shield, and now everybody's gonna die.
Now, when they try re-entering, which they're going to do now because they're about to run out of air, the whole ship's going to kind of explode and everybody dies. Whoops.
That's another whoopsie from Ben. That's 2 episodes in a row where he now causes more potential death.
Right, yeah.
But I don't think I can really blame Ben for that. I mean, what else was he going to do? Not dive out of the way? That whole visit to Beth's house was a ploy by Magic to get her to call Janice.
Yes.
So they can get her number and her whereabouts. They couldn't find that information any other way.
Yeah, I don't know. Janice had a burner phone maybe, and they needed Beth to contact her so that we could figure out how to reach her.
So Beth does that. Is that the last we're going to see of Susan Dial as Beth? Are we going to ever see Beth again, do you think?
I don't know. I guess it depends where they're going with this. I'd like to see more of her. I'd like to keep her involved in the story.
That was just kind of like one brief scene.
Yeah, that was a cameo. Whether she'll recur or not is to be seen.
So they go to Janice's house, and Jen ends up arguing that Magic needs to handle Addison differently, to include her in the decision-making, rather than just dictating how things were going to work. And then we cut to the project, where Addison and Ian talk. He can't uncrypt the drive without using up so much power that it'll attract a lot of attention. So once again, he's back to, or they are once again back to, sorry, pronoun misuse again. I was better at that last week than I am right now. But yes, so they are back to, you need to bring your friends into this to, get this unencrypted so that we can figure out what the heck is going on here.
Ian seems to really be trying to do what Ben normally would and kind of get everybody on the same page.
Ian thinks that the reason Addison is holding back is not because of mistrust of Magic and Jen, but because she's worried about what they're going to discover about Ben.
Which makes sense.
It does. It's a valid psychological reason.
I mean, this was found in her apartment. She knows it belonged to Ben. I would want to know what's on it before you share it with the government.
Absolutely. Back in the future, they are about to attempt re-entry, which Ben is arguing against.
Back in the past, you mean?
Back in the past? Wow. All right. So anyway, Ben is arguing against this because if they re-enter without the heat shield, they are going to die.
Right. And he knows that because Ziggy told him so, but the crew just thinks he's being overly cautious. Well, some of the crew.
I forgot how this happened, but they suggest going to Mir, which Addison says if they do so, there's an 86% chance they're all going to live.
Yeah. And Samantha Stratton, who is currently in charge because her superior officer is unconscious, she agrees with this. She says, let's do it. And it looks like everything's going to be okay.
But unfortunately for her and the rest of them, the commander, Jim Reynolds, wakes up and says, no, you're not doing this. This will be an embarrassment to the program. We cannot go to the Russians. And it's kind of weird because, as you mentioned, I don't know if you mentioned it here, but you mentioned it to me at least, that they had cooperated in, the Russians and the U.S., had cooperated in quite a few missions.
Yes, Atlantis, in all of its missions, real-life missions prior to this date, 97 and before, they were working with Mir. They were exchanging crew. Like, they were the ones relieving some of the cosmonauts and putting astronauts out there. And, yeah, it seemed a little off that he was so concerned about what the Russians would think of him.
We could blame it on the concussion, of course. Back in the present day, Magic and Jen go into Janice's house. They discover a secret door leading to a place that looks like the project. This is probably the place that we were seeing in the series premiere that I thought was the project itself. No, it seems to be a room that looks like the project. And then we go back to the past where Jim Reynolds argues with Stratton some more. I think this is where your theme of this is not a democracy comes into play.
Yeah, that came up. So before Reynolds woke up, the Max character was disagreeing with Ben and with Samantha Stratton saying, this is a terrible idea. We should just head home. We should not go to Muir. And Samantha Stratton says, this is not a democracy. I'm in charge. I get to make the decision. And
this is actually similar to something that Magic says earlier that we didn't cover. He back in the past, present. Damn, I'm getting so confused.
It's okay.
I love this. I feel like I'm covering This Is Us again.
Yes.
We're talking about multiple different timelines.
And it feels kind of like that, too, with these themes recurring in both timelines.
Anyway, Magic at one point kind of said the same thing. I'm in charge here. This is not a democracy.
Right.
So we have two themes running throughout the episode that impact both timelines, both stories.
Yeah. So when Reynolds came back, he quoted Stratton, you just said it's not a democracy. You're right. It's not a democracy. And I'm awake. I'm in charge. We're going home.
She ends up hightailing it out of there, going to do her own thing, basically to shut them out of the module.
She was trying to sabotage it so that they didn't have a choice.
And
which would have really ruined her career.
Fortunately, it doesn't go that way. The commander, Jim Reynolds, tells Ben to go get her back into the pilot's chair. Ben follows her, figures that out, and Addison tells him that he needs to fix this. He needs to stop this from happening. He doesn't know how, but she tells him that he can fix it by doing what he does best, getting everybody moving in the same direction, just like he used to do on the Quantum Leap project before he leaped. He does this by going up top again and basically just selling Stratton straight up out. Like, he tells the commander what Stratton is going to do.
Yeah.
And then has an impassioned argument for why he's not in his best state. He was, like, unconscious until 15 minutes ago. He has a concussion. He's not good. He needs to trust that Stratton knows what's going on.
He needs to trust that he personally trained her for moments like this. Let her lead this and let her do what she wants to do for the good of all of us.
And once again, I haven't said this yet, but Raymond Lee, I love Raymond Lee as Ben. I think he's doing an exceptional job. This cast in general is really growing on me after 2 episodes. Okay, so he convinces them to do this, but now they have a new problem. They don't have long-distance communication.
Right, so they headed towards Mir, and they realized they don't have a way to communicate with Mir.
So they try using some kind of short-term communication. Short-range communication was what I'm trying to say. So Ben has to go on for another spacewalk.
Right, because they said the only way this will work is if somebody's standing outside, literally pointing the antenna directly at Mir.
In the present day, we have Magic and Jen poking around the basement, I guess, wherever this is.
Janice's lair.
There's cameras, so they know that she's watching. They get a call from Janice, and she is played by Georgina Riley. I mentioned that as a possibility based on the credits last week to you. I didn't mention it in the podcast, but it's pretty much confirmed now.
Yes, we actually seen her as a character. We've seen a direct image of her face.
And she's talking in sinister, almost villainous ways. Like, it seems to be pointing that they are up to no good and almost sounding like she's confirming their suspicions. And Magic tries to talk her into coming back, but Janice is not having anything to do with it. Back at the spacewalk, Ben thanks Addison for helping him. Helping the guy that nobody trusts at this point. Addison says, because of the speech that Ben gives the commander, clicks something in Addison's mind, it seems, like from her reaction. And she remembers that that she knows this man and that she definitely does trust him. And she says as much. Yeah,
she says, I do trust you. And she was questioning it. She was second guessing him. And this is when she's like, no, I know who you are. I know you're not up to no good. And to him, it was just like, oh, there's somebody who believes in me. He still doesn't know the connection between him and Addison. And it's a little sad to see those moments.
Okay, so they start to try to communicate with Mir. It doesn't go well, and Ben eventually realizes it's because they're sleeping.
They're sleeping. It's the middle of the night.
And Ben makes the insane decision to unhook himself from the safety harness and go leaping literally towards
across space.
Where anything could go wrong here. This is completely insane.
Couldn't they have found found a longer tether or, some rope, something.
Yeah, they probably could have done that, but, Ben leaps before he thinks. Ha! Okay, so somehow this insanely works, and he gets to Mir.
And he grabs on and doesn't fly off into space, lost forever.
Good for Ben. And he knocks on the door. Yeah. This works?
Just before he did that, though, what he said is, remember, this goes back to that theme. At least twice before this, Addison had said to him, you don't control the leap. And when he's about to take this physical leap in space, she says, what are you doing? And he said, I'm taking control of the leap.
So it does play off that theme. Still, it's completely insane.
It is, yes. And it seems very out of character. We don't know Ben's character too well yet, but from everything we've heard about him, this seems completely crazy. He doesn't seem like a daredevil or someone who would take these big of risks.
So the crew is saved. Yay! Ben wants to know if he's going to go home now, and Addison says it's 50-50. I think the odds are a lot worse than that. But...
yeah. They have no idea what's going on.
Addison says that she will be with him the whole way, and then he leaps. And I definitely heard the leaping sound effect this time, for sure.
And it looked very similar, too, with the blue, and he leapt inside of the spacesuit. It was a cool moment. I had a problem with this ending, though.
I didn't have the same problem. I didn't even think of it until you started talking about it.
So something we've kind of joked about a lot when we talk about the original series is what happens when these people come back, and they don't remember these times in their life. And it's got to be some of these good things that happen got to kind of be undone because, I don't know, these people miss these moments and they don't know what's in the now. They sound crazy. So here's this moment. Okay, Ben leaves and David comes back. He is standing outside in outer space, holding on to Mir. He has no tether. If he lets go, he's going to fly into space and die. He has no idea why he's there. The last thing he's going to remember is being in the launch. And he doesn't know what their problem is, what help they need. It seems like a really, really bad situation that they just put David in.
Yeah. They didn't really think this one through.
So I think that was a really silly moment for them to leap Ben out. He should have been safely inside one of the shuttles, either, their Space Shuttle Atlantis or in the Mir space station before he left. I mean, that's my opinion.
The entire climax is kind of silly. It's not realistic, but that's okay. It's like I said, it's in the vein of the original series, which was never horribly realistic when it comes down to it in a lot of ways. So, anyway, we go back to the project. Magic says, he basically apologizes to Addison and says that it should have been a group discussion. That he was a military man for the longest time, and when things went bad, he just started barking orders. But this is a different situation. If this is going to work, they're going to need all of them as a team.
And they need to work together.
Now, Addison accepts his apology, but thinks that Magic was right not to tell Ben these things, and that Ben also agrees with him. So they plug in the computer. They can't access the information because it's encrypted. The computer that they got from... Did I even talk about that?
I don't think so. I think you skipped that part.
Oh, okay. So...
while they were at Janice's lair, right, we talked about the phone call came in. And then Janice, sabotaged the place and...
booby-trapped it, basically.
Yeah, started on fire. And Jen was able to take a hard drive and bring it with her when they left. So Jen and Magic barely escaped. The whole place kind of blew up in flames, but she had a hard drive that she took from there.
And that is the hard drive they're currently trying to get information out of, but they can't because it's encrypted.
And it requires key.
That Ian Wright speculates about, which, wouldn't you know it, Addison has that key.
Yeah.
And finally trusts her team enough to give it to them. And what's revealed?
Well, they put the key in, and we get to see this 3D image of all of these. It looks like stars in space, but there are all these coordinates, and there's a blinking spot, and Ian says that's a destination. That's a place and time in history, and they don't know where it is or when it is, but that looks like that is their goal. Ben and Janice, that's their goal, is to get to this spot.
My speculation is that some of these places in time are related to where Sam has been.
Yeah. So, should we talk about that?
Sure. Let's go. Let's go for it.
If it is true, which we think it is at this point, that this astronaut was the baby from the pilot, that means she never existed in the original history, right? So Sam directly caused her to exist, which kind of directly influenced this entire mission. Which, you know what I just thought of? Maybe that's a reason that this isn't a trip that even happened in our reality.
Ah, yes.
Because now we're living in the world where Sam already changed things.
Right.
It's a whole different history than our world that we know.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems possible now that the reason Ben is there, whether Ben and Janice had any control over it, or whatever's controlling these leaps has something to do with it, that Ben has gone to a place now that only exists, like this exact moment only exists because of something Sam did.
Now, what's really interesting is there are 4 characters in this episode that we know of that have all been impacted by Sam. Magic.
Yeah.
Beth. Janice doesn't exist
without Sam.
If Sam doesn't change Al's history. Who's the 4th person? Oh, yeah, right. Samantha Stratton.
It was never said in the episode. Okay, so there's 3 possibilities here. 1, it was total coincidence that they named this character the same name as that baby and they didn't even realize they did it. I don't think that's true. 2, it's an Easter egg for us to just marvel in the fact that that's that baby and that's the end of it. Or 3, it's really important to this story, and that's where we're going, is we're going to start seeing characters in these leaps that are directly affected by Sam and the original leaps, and it's all going to come together at some point where we find out that that's what's going on, that every leap, only the situation in the leap only exists because of its change Sam made, and now Ben is dealing with the ripples in history caused from that. And the idea of that really excites me. I want to dig into that deeper. I want to go back and look at all of the characters in the first episode to see if one of those names could be somebody linked to a leap that we didn't notice. And maybe all of the leaps are going to link to original stories.
We shall definitely see. All right, so Ben ends up leaping into a boxing ring where he's instantly getting pummeled.
Yep.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the episode. You want to talk a little bit more about the trailer?
So yeah, that's the trailer for next week. We see him in the boxing room. We know it's the 1970s. I find that interesting because Sam did boxing before.
Yep, that was actually like the 3rd episode of the series, The Right Hand of God.
Something early, yeah. And I wasn't a big fan of that. Boxing, I'm not interested. But could this boxing story directly link to that boxing story? Could maybe not that character, but one of the side characters we're going to meet be a character we already know?
What's interesting is that the trailer suggests he's there to win some kind of title bout, but then cast doubt on that in the trailer when we see some guy get arrested, which I think is his manager.
His manager or somebody gets arrested. There's something going on, right? Which we'll get into in the episode, I'm sure. But I'm excited to see if this has anything to do with Sam's boxing leap.
The title of that episode is Someone Up There Likes Ben. I'm not really digging these episode titles.
Yeah.
We have the date on the first episode.
Which doesn't make sense, that they would then go to names.
Atlantis, that's fine. It actually describes the shuttle mission that they're on. And then Someone Up There Likes Ben, that's just a weird title.
Although, if we're talking about the original boxing episode, what was it called?
The Right Hand of God.
Yeah, so we're talking about God.
Oh, okay.
There could be a
thematic connection.
Yeah.
Okay, you're turning me around on this.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing that we saw in the trailer is they talk more about that data that they're looking at the computer, and they really spell out, we hear this conversation at the project, that each of those little dots represents a leap that they think Ben is going to make. So Ben's leaps are all charted out, and this is the calculations that Janice was talking about, where Janice knows where Ben's going to go. This data tells us. They don't know what this data means, so they can't, they just have little dots. They don't have the data connected to it, but it's buried in there somewhere. And whether they planned these dots, Janice and Ben, or whether it was just her figuring out the what's it called? Like the patterns of how leaping works, that she knows, or she at least has a very good theory of where he's going to go, when he's going to go, and all of the leaps necessary to get to whatever specific point they're trying to get to.
Definitely some interesting stuff to look forward to. Stacie, do you have any additional thoughts on the episode?
As far as that specific point, I have a theory.
Okay.
Okay, my theory is the specific point they're trying to go is Vietnam. And somehow linked back to that original leap. Whether they're trying to get Ben to leap into that date in history, whether they're trying to get him to leap into Sam, whether they're trying to get him to leap into magic, I feel like it could all be culminating around the Vietnam episode. And I think that maybe the reason that they are focusing there is that could be a moment in time where they could have changed history for everybody. If Sam had been successful in rescuing the POW, which we found out was Al, he wouldn't have needed to leap as himself in Mirror Image to save Beth and Al's marriage. Al would have came home early, and Beth and Al could have lived out the life that they had now in this current history. And maybe, just maybe, if that happened, Sam wouldn't be lost in time. Maybe it would have played out differently, where he never leapt as himself, and maybe they would have had a way to bring him home.
Very interesting, very interesting. I think that's a good place to stop. What did you guys think about last night's episode? Please share your thoughts with us. You can reach Stacie through...
You can reach me on Twitter at TVN Coupon Talk, or at NE Jewelry Party. Those are my 2 Twitter handles.
All right. That'll about do it for us. If you like this podcast and wish to support it, there are a number of ways you can do so. You can follow me at Core Productions on Twitter. You can follow Stacie at the places she just mentioned. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. And you can follow or subscribe to this podcast. If you are on my YouTube channel, you can like, share, and subscribe to my channel. All right, this is Dave and Stacie from Corn Productions signing off.